Everybody loves a good old shoot game. Video games in the first-person shooter genre have always been enjoyed by all since they allow gamers to fire high-velocity projectiles into all sorts of targets, from Nazis, to zombies, to even Nazi zombies. One of the first shooter games, Doom, broke the mold by giving players something different to shoot at: demons. For this reason, Doom was insanely groundbreaking, with many future shoot games taking inspiration from it. The original Doom and its sequel cemented themselves as cornerstones of the FPS genre, and they still remain highly popular all these years later, especially among modders, who create their own original games using a special version of Doom's engine. In this video, I want to take a look at one of these games which caught my attention recently. This game is Memoirs of Magic. Created by Strawberry Octopus, Memoirs of Magic is available as a free download on itch.io, and it's probably one of the best free games I've played through in a while. Memoirs of Magic is a first-person shooter with many role-playing game elements, such as stats to increase, weapons to obtain and upgrade, and side quests to complete. This game takes quite a bit of inspiration from various classic games, especially the Legend of Zelda series. The plot to Memoirs of Magic is, it's written out on the gamesitch.io page. See, I put it up on the screen. You can pause the video and read it if you want. If you want me to read it for you, I ain't doing that. I hate reading. Basically, the story of Memoirs of Magic is that you've been tasked by the King of the City of Magic, King Essay, or King Friend as he's known in the English translation, to gather the 5 elemental hearts spread throughout the world in order to defeat a great evil. With the all-knowing royal clairvoyant Fartilda's guidance, you set out on your quest. Actually, rewind the video a bit. I should probably mention that before all this happens, you have a very important choice to make. This being which character you want to play through the game as. There are 7 different characters to choose from, and it appears that half of them do not wear pants. Each character has their own strengths and special traits which the others lack. A major difference between characters is their starting weapons. Excluding the monk, each character starts with a gun, a magic tome, and a signature weapon. While every character is eventually able to acquire old guns and tomes by purchasing them at each of the game's towns, signature weapons are unique to each character, most of which are melee weapons. Another difference between the characters are their starting stats. There are 4 character stats in Memoirs of Magic. Defense affects your maximum HP, and Intellect affects your maximum MP for spellcasting, and maximum ammo capacity for guns. Strength and Agility are easily the most important of the 4 stats, as they affect how much damage you deal, and your movement and jumping abilities respectively. Each character's total stats add up to 1200. Except for the monk's stats, however. There seems to be some weird issue with his stat total. I'm not very good at math, and my calculator recently shat the bed, so I need you guys to help me get to the bottom of this. So look here. 300 plus 300 plus 300 plus 500 equals some weird number? I'm not sure what exactly it is, but I know it isn't 1200. In any case, the starting stats don't really matter too much, since you can eventually increase all 4 of your character's stats by paying large amounts of gold. What really sets the characters apart are their special perks. The Lizard Man Warrior was the character I beat the game with, so he's the only one I really have extensive knowledge on, I'm afraid. His signature weapon is his axe, which isn't insanely interesting compared to the others until you're able to upgrade it. At max level, you can unleash a whirlwind axe, which sucks enemies into it and constantly deals damage to them. I found it insanely useful in situations against huge groups of evasive enemies, such as the many skeletons his boss spawns throughout his fight. With the Lizard, you can also go berserk, greatly increasing your movement and attack speed and giving you health regeneration, though limiting you to only being able to use your axe during the effect. The Human Cleric starts with some pretty nifty support magic through his Light Tome, and he's quite desirable in multiplayer since he can heal and revive downed players with his Holy Cross. Yeah, that's right, this game actually allows for multiplayer. More on that later. The Imp Gunslinger excels in fighting in close quarters with his ricocheting bullets. He's also able to craft special ammo on the fly, which otherwise can only be purchased from stores. The Skeletal Mage is a magic powerhouse. His signature weapon, his magic orb, can be switched between 3 different elemental settings, which serve different functions. Like the Imp, the Skeleton is also capable of crafting, being able to turn restorative ingredients into more effective potions. What the heck can I say about the Rat Thief, other than the obvious? Look at this guy's hair! Did he get his cut from the McDonald's dollar menu? Nah, I'm just messing around. He's actually a very handsome young man. The rat's able to pick locks in order to get to special areas full of treasure, which are typically completely inaccessible by other characters. The Hawkman Knight is clearly the most attractive character. He gets discounts on anything he purchases, which is pretty handy. Being a bird, the Hawk also has access to a special ability in combat. I'm surrounded by enemies here. There's no way I'll survive, unless I call upon bird power!
Mischief, can you say hello?
Hello. Hi. 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 Hi.
Wait, what? I died while I was using bird power? Oh right, I forgot. Bird power does nothing. Last but not least is the Wolf Monk. He has the most unique playstyle, as he is incapable of using guns, but has access to a rather interesting signature weapon, his martial arts skills. By inputting different button combinations, you can unleash a variety of attacks which are useful for different situations. He seems to be quite powerful once you know how to use him, but as the game suggests, he's probably the worst character to start off with, especially since it can be very dangerous in this game to have to always be in melee range of enemies. After choosing your character, it's time to embark on your quest. I was a bit lost on what to do and where to go when I first started playing Memoirs of Magic, so I'm gonna briefly run through how the early game progresses up to the first dungeon, and share some gameplay tips which could be useful if you decide to play the game yourself. After receiving your quest, you can head on over to the Castle of Magic's kitchen to grab some food for healing. Within the castle is also the first secret area, containing chests full of gold. In standard Doom fashion, there are plenty of secret areas spread throughout the game, many of which can be found by paying close attention to your map. There's also a marble golem here, which you can destroy for a statue. These statues pretty much act as this game's optional collectibles. You can turn over any statues you find to the museum located within the City of Magic in return for gold. The City of Magic also contains the Boulevard Magic Emporium, a place which essentially allows for fast travel between the game's many villages after you've discovered them. The arena is a good place to farm materials and gold for monsters, but it's unfortunately locked until you've defeated the first boss. Lastly, the Magnus and Mead Tavern allows you to rest and recover your HP and MP. There's quite a few people you can speak to here for some useful information. There's also this mirror in one of the tavern's rooms, which you can actually enter for another secret area with a few enemies and another marble golem. To the south of the city lies the Forest of Magic, where enemies may randomly ambush you. It's important to know that Memoirs of Magic allows you to save your game at any time, even in the middle of boss fights. You should be saving your game often, even this early on, since the forest contains some nasty enemies, such as these coked out squid dudes, and these little hopping gremlins who steal your gold when they hit you. You don't even get the stolen gold back when you kill them. What a jip. The forest is actually pretty big, and can stink to get through, especially if the character you chose has low starting agility. An interesting quirk in Doom's engine is that you actually move slightly faster if you move forward and strafe at the same time, instead of just pressing W. Knowing this can be handy for getting around, since some of this game's areas are pretty massive. Another important thing to know for mobility is that you can kinda double jump if you perform a kick by pressing Ctrl after a jump. There are quite a few jumping puzzles throughout the game, so knowing that you can get some extra jump distance through kicking is almost necessary to progress in some cases. Anyway, the forest leads to several different locations, but it's best to go east to the Misty Forest to start out. After completing the graveyard puzzle here and defeating a few waves of enemies, you'll come across this forest maze, quite reminiscent of the Lost Woods from Ocarina of Time. Completing this segment gives you access to the first village, Beetropolis. I found this place to be simply beautiful. It's a great place to practice your bee hopping. There's really nowhere else I'd rather be than the bee village. 12 years ago, I watched a group of men drag a woman into an alleyway. She was screaming for help, yet I did nothing and just left. The guilt I felt over my lack of action has slowly been eating away at my soul ever since. The first shop becomes available here, where you can spend your hard-earned cash on stat upgrades and consumables, as well as purchase the Crossbow and Earth Magic Tome. I highly recommend buying the tome, since its primary fire is actually one of the most useful attacks in the game. Wait, hold up. Is that dude from Deltarune? Oh no, sorry, my mistake. The King of Bees wants you to save his beloved wife from the Forgotten Temple located near the village. This place serves as the first dungeon, and it's quite challenging, so you'll want to prepare adequately before you try and tackle it. The game opens up a good amount after this dungeon's completion, and you gain access to most of the other villages. This is great, since with each new village, you also gain access to a new magic emporium, where you can purchase new weapons and magical tomes. Memoirs of Magic lets you use plenty of crazy weapons and magic to vanquish your foes. Alchemical guns require AP to fire, and unlike HP and MP, AP can't be recovered by resting at an inn. You have to consume nitro gel or potions to recover it, so weapons that are more efficient with their AP use tend to be more desirable. The Shatter Shotgun easily takes the cake as it does huge damage at close range for just 1 AP per shot. The magnetic minigun, on the other hand, burns through ammo but becomes more efficient as it gets upgraded. I found myself using it for most of the late game boss fights due to its insane DPS output. The auto arrow crossbow has an interesting mechanic where stronger bolts are launched from it if you can fire the weapon in a certain rhythm. I couldn't really get this rhythm down, so I never bothered with this weapon. The flame furnace is Memoirs of Magic's rocket launcher. It does massive damage and can even be used for rocket jumping, but it costs a whopping 10 AP per shot. The Death Blow and the Helios Communicator are two incredibly unique weapons. The Death Blow is this weird revolver thing that summons skeletal minions for its primary fire and unleashes a giant shot with its secondary fire. The Helios Communicator is capable of calling down an impressive orbital strike for a huge AP cost, but it can also be used to fire slow-moving long-range projectiles. I never really used either of these two weapons since I kind of found them useful in very few situations. Just as there are 6 alchemical weapons, there are also 6 magic tomes. Each tome has a damage-dealing primary fire and can also be used to cast one of 3 stronger spells by holding down right-click. Most of these charged spells apply temporary buffs or summon minions to aid you, but some can also support you in other ways, such as the Earth Tome's level 1 charged spell, which generates HP restoring apples. The Earth Tome was the main one I used throughout the game since its primary attack is pretty ridiculous. It launches a shotgun burst of earth spikes, which can bounce off of walls and hit enemies multiple times for a mere 1 MP per cast. Against bosses and large groups of enemies, this spell completely shreds. Anytime I used the Earth Tome, I couldn't help but feel like I was playing Cuphead again, but with all the finger snapping. Some spells and weapons combo extremely well together. My favorite combination was probably the Water Tome and the Flame Furnace. The Water Tome's level 2 charged spell stops time for a few moments, during which any projectiles you fire will stay still but begin to move once time resumes. I found that stopping time against highly evasive bosses and sending as many rockets as I could headed their way absolutely annihilated them. Aside from the signature weapons, guns, and magic, there is another way to fight in Memoirs of Magic, by summoning. Throughout the game, you'll run into the 6 elemental dragons, who can be fought as optional bosses. Upon defeat, they'll not only give you the means to upgrade the equipment associated with their element to max level, but they'll also allow you to summon them in combat. By picking up gold drops from enemies, your SP bar slowly fills. When it's full, you can temporarily become one of the dragons and use their attacks and abilities. This can do huge burst damage if you know how to effectively utilize the summons. Overall, I really like the creativity behind Memoirs of Magic's weapons, even if I kinda ended up mostly using the simpler stuff during my playthrough. Something pretty interesting about Memoirs of Magic is that it isn't a game that's only able to be experienced by yourself. According to this epic readme located in the game's files, you can actually play through the game in multiplayer if you so please. I've only played through the game in single player, so this segment of the video is going to be pretty short, but I can mostly predict how multiplayer would function. It's possible to drop items from your inventory for others to pick up, so having a mage and gunslinger in your party would be pretty handy since you could throw them your materials and have them craft them into more effective items. Since the knight gets discounts on his purchases, it would probably be wise to entrust him with the party's gold and have him buy items to share with everybody else. I believe the warrior and the monk are really the only characters who do not have special abilities, which could be especially useful in multiplayer. Like I said, I played through this game by myself, but to get the feeling for how multiplayer would work, I found that I could actually act out player-to-player scenarios using the mirror located in the tavern. Here's what an average multiplayer interaction would probably look like in Memoirs of Magic.
Hey bro, thanks again for saving me from those dredgelings back there.
No problem, bro. You look pretty beat up. Why don't you take some of these mandragoras and heal up?
Hey, thanks man. I appreciate that. You're still saving up for the shotgun upgrade, aren't you?
Yeah, bro. Just need several hundred more gold.
Oh, I got you covered, man. Here's 1,000.
Oh, thanks, bro. I'm sure this upgrade will be a big help to the team.
By the way, bro, we're heading over to Arby's in an hour. Wanna tag along?
Totally, man. Arby's roast beef is so bussin'.
For real, for real? No cap?
Sheesh. I've probably talked enough about Memoirs of Magic's gameplay, so I guess I should mention what I believe to be one of the game's best qualities, its design. The game is very colorful, and I find the character designs to be quite pleasing. They actually reminded me a lot of one of the first games I bought on Steam, Rogue Shooter. A game that I got because I think I saw Vinesauce play it once, and which immediately stopped receiving updates after I purchased it, and whose developer appears to not have done anything in over 6 years. Unfortunate. Anyway, Memoirs of Magic clearly receives inspiration for its designs from the classics. The bosses are all very Zelda-like and uniquely presented as 3D models, whereas regular enemies and NPCs are just 8-directional sprites of 3D models. The character portraits also gave me serious Shining Force vibes, especially the Hawkman. Fitting for the era of gaming it's emulating, Memoirs of Magic also features a Midi soundtrack. Let's have a listen to it. Hey, that sounds pretty nice. I do like this game's music, but I do have a pretty big issue with it. This being that there really isn't enough of it for how long the game is. It took me over 14 hours to complete the game, and there are only 17 songs on the soundtrack. Every village has the same theme, every dangerous area has the same theme, and every dungeon has the same theme. The music gets repetitive very quickly. Going back to Memoirs of Magic's design, some of the characters especially stuck out to me. Take the Bird King for example. He's a bird, but he also has a pet bird. What the heck? That is absolutely bonkers. Other designs also stuck out to me, but in a pretty interesting way. It's something I noticed throughout the game which I feel the need to mention. Some of the male characters in this game are a little bit, sexualized? Like, I don't think it's a coincidence that so many characters are just in their underwear. I'm not necessarily saying that this is a bad thing, but it's clear that the game is trying to appeal to a specific audience with some of its character designs. While investigating the matter, I noticed that there's even a character, being the Fire Dragon, who you can actually see the ass crack of if you get just the right viewing angle on him. I don't mean to be dramatic or anything, but I would have to say that, like Roly-Polies, Memoirs of Magic is a game for men, just in a different way. A somewhat gayer way. I guess what I'm trying to say is that Memoirs of Magic is gay. Again, not that there's a problem with that, but some players might find the sheer masculinity this game exudes at times to be a bit too much to handle. Something that I do genuinely have a problem with in Memoirs of Magic is the entirety of the second dungeon. I had a whole 1-minute long spiel written in the script of specifically what's wrong with that dungeon, but I think I'll just simplify everything by saying that the single most annoying enemy, and probably the most annoying puzzle mechanics in the game, can both be found in this dungeon. Even the final few dungeons were pushovers compared to this place. I think my only other real issue with the game was its length. I do feel that some of the dungeons were a bit too long and just kept repeating somewhat uninteresting puzzle segments and battles against waves of enemies to the point where some of it felt like filler. I think I have to give Memoirs of Magic an 8 out of 10. This game is great and also free to download, and I would highly recommend it. I'll leave a link to the game's itch.io page in the description. That's all I have to say for Memoirs of Magic. Please like this video if you, if you like the video.